Farm Manager 2021 is finally here. I've been so excited for this one. Farm Manager 2018 was nearly the very game that I myself have wanted to build for many, many years. It just missed the mark in a few key areas, but it was their first attempt and I was very excited to see what would happen for 2021. I'm very grateful to the devs because they have provided me an early access to the game so that I can make this review for you. So the question is, everybody wants to know, is Farm Manager 2021 everything we hoped it would be? Sadly, no, it isn't. Now, this is my perspective. Your perspective might be different, but listen to what I'm telling you. As much as I appreciate them sending me keys so that I can play the game, create content for you, and review it, my allegiance, as always, is to you, the buyer, and not the developer. I actually make these reviews for you so that you can buy with absolute confidence. You know all the bugs and issues that exist in this game. If you watch my review and you still want to buy the game, great. That means that the bugs and the issues that I find and highlight to you are not going to put you off or ruin your gameplay experience. That is why I make these videos. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been improvements. Now, there are a bunch of new products and equipment and opportunities for you to explore. That's fine. I'm not going to go into detail for every single item, but there is a whole host of new things that you can experience in the game. I have also passed on the most serious of the issues that I've encountered to the devs, so hopefully by now they will be fixed. But there are many things that I really wanted to see in 2021 that just aren't here. So let me just discuss all the problems in the game, and at the end I'll tell you what's good and what you can expect moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay, shall we? Let's talk about buildings, vehicles, and the repairs that are required for the vehicles. There are some serious issues in this game. You really do need to listen to this before you buy it. Buildings need to be built within range of their supply item. For example, an abattoir needs the cows, the sheep, the goats within a certain range. It doesn't actually tell you this. You just kind of have to figure it out. Now, there is a big old circle as you're putting it down, but the thing is, if you're zoomed in really close to it, that big circle doesn't look like a circle. It just looks like, the ground. It looks like you've highlighted the ground as you're placing your item. There needs to be more information on the UI, simple as that. Now, the small animal houses that you pick to put sheep or goats in, for example, can house either sheep or goats. But if you decide to build it with sheep in, then you can never ever swap it back to goats, even though it's the same identical building and they look the same, and the only thing that's different is that one's got sheep in and one's got goats in. So the problem with that is, let's say you can only afford one building and you put sheep in it and you think, oh, these sheep aren't working out, I'm going to try goats. You can't. You have to sell the building, then build another one with goats in it, which means you're going to lose money, rather than just swapping it about. These are logic issues. They're not bugs per se, these are logic bugs, things that they haven't thought through properly, and they get worse. If a tractor breaks down with a trailer attached to it, you cannot swap to a working tractor. So if the profit from what is in the trailer is needed to repair the tractor, you're absolutely done. And this happened to me in my playthrough. You cannot repair the tractor, you cannot sell it, you cannot relocate it, you cannot detach the trailer, you are completely stuck. And the same applies for the trailer. I had one instance where I had two tractors and two trailers. One of the tractors broke down and one of the trailers broke down. So the working tractor couldn't take the working trailer to sell it, so that I had the money to repair either the tractor or the trailer on the other thing. So all of my profit was stuck there and there was nothing at all that I could do. I couldn't even get my staff to take the products out of the back of the trailer and take it to the warehouse to sell it. That is a serious logic bug. They've also added a mechanic to the game. I don't think it was in 2018, correct me if I'm wrong, but he doesn't seem to fix anything. At one point I had a tractor that had broken down and I waited more than 2 years for a specialist to turn up to fix my tractor. He never arrived, I ran out of money, the farm closed down. And like I say, the AI system here is still a bit of a joke. It makes no sense to me. If a tractor is ploughing field A and also needs to plough field B, which is the field right next to it, the tractor will drive all the way back to the parking spot, offload the plough and park the tractor. Then somebody else will get into the tractor, pick up the plough and go back to field B, which was where the tractor was already. It makes no sense. They really do need to put more effort into the AI, and it's clear that they haven't done anywhere near enough, if anything at all, to improve the AI system. There's also a distance restriction for fields, believe it or not. Apparently, even though I only had 1 square wide farm, the fields were too far away for the tractors to be able to use them. What are you talking about? It's a tractor. drive to the field. It's mental. But that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is the staff. Now, in 2018, I complained about the staff a lot, and things have not got any better. Well, they're different, but not better. In total, I think there are about 15 faces, which are reused again and again and again. When you employ 2 or 3 people, you can see that the same face is used 4 or 5 times in each instance. So I've got to ask the question, what is the point in having the faces? If you cannot recognize characters or employees by their face alone, then just get rid of the faces. They become completely pointless. Worse than that, you still cannot control staff if they are working. If somebody's working and you need them to go and do a different job, you cannot reassign them. You cannot sack them. You can do absolutely nothing with them at all. If they're working, you just have to sit and wait for them to stop working and take a break before you can tell them to do anything. Loosely put, they outrank you. There are other issues surrounding the staff. If you, for example, assign a staff member to an area and that area breaks down for whatever reason, they get automatically unassigned. Then they will get automatically reassigned to another job, something else, something completely unrelated. So then you need to chase them around, figure out where they are, wait for them to stop working, and then go back and have a rest before you can reassign them. But if you accidentally miss them or you don't get them in time, they'll go and do another job. So you have to sit there and wait again. Now, if you're 100% reliant on the abattoir processing beef in order to progress through the campaign, I think you see where I'm going with this, then you get stuck in this loop of losing money hand over fist just because you can't get the staff member to go and do the job that you want them to do. So you end up hiring more staff. But because you're running the game at high speed, that same problem will happen again and again and again. It's an absolute nightmare. This is exactly the problem with not thinking through things before you build them. Now, I don't remember exactly how seasonal staff worked in 2018, but I think it's changed for 2021. Now, you get to pick the valid working months for each house. It's a good idea. It's a really good idea, but it doesn't work at all. They never leave. In order to get rid of your employees, you have to sack them. Now, if you take into consideration that if they're working, you can't do anything with them, then you've got this ongoing processing problem of trying to get rid of people in order to bring the expenses of wages down so that your farm doesn't go completely bankrupt. Now, if you haven't changed the months to accommodate the fact that you're trying to get rid of people, then every time you sack somebody, somebody new will come in and take their place. Let's say you've got 50 staff members. It's going to take you approximately, on a good day, 150 clicks of the mouse in order to sack them all. If any of them are working at the time, then you could easily escalate that up to about 500 clicks. The UI is very, very broken. It's not well thought out at all. The best way I've found in order to sack large numbers of people is within the staff list. This allows you to filter by permanent and temporary staff, but if you close that window at any time to deal with some other emergency, let's say a building is on fire, it will automatically re-add the permanent staff filter back in. This means that when you go back in there to try and get rid of the people you're trying to get rid of when they're on a break, you'll accidentally sack some of your permanent staff. Accidents will be made in this way. The whole UI and the whole staff system just needs to be completely redesigned. It's not unusable, but it's bloody close to being unusable. At best, it's incredibly bloody frustrating, and I think that is the game in total. At times, it is fun, if you're patient, and you can play it. If you can think outside of the box and see past all the bugs and issues and the logic problems, it can be played and it can be a loss of enjoyment. But my god, this game could be so much better. One thing that I asked for from the original that still isn't here is a night and day cycle. If for no other reason than just so you know when the day has ended. I also wanted to see much deeper finances. I wanted to see bank loans and different opportunities for you to invest and sort of look back and track the history of the products that you've been making and selling and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, that has not materialized. I also wanted to see a better UI. The previous UI was okay, but it was clunky and it wasn't great. I've got to say, especially for the fields and the products and the stuff that you're growing, they really have improved the UI around that area. I also wanted to see better staff controls and better AI overall. Now, the staff will quit if they're unhappy. If you're putting them in a position that they don't particularly want to work in too many hours, or they're not getting enough pay, then they will quit. Possibly there's a little pop-up that tells you that they've quit, but it doesn't happen very often, and the warning system behind it is easy to miss. What will happen is that you'll just find that one of your key working areas that you're absolutely relying on no longer has anybody assigned to it, and therefore is making no money. Now, something I didn't expect to see was fire. It's a new, unexpected addition, and I've got to say it's pretty cool. It's certainly something unexpected, and it does just sort of happen in a second. It's not perfect in quite a few ways. One thing that doesn't happen that really should is that it doesn't appear to spread. So if something catches on fire and you don't see it, the building next to it will be absolutely fine. In fact, anything that's in it or on it will be absolutely fine, and that's a bit of a shame as well. For example, my solid concrete car parking area caught on fire in one of my very, very early episodes. Now, initially it looked to me like the tractors themselves were on fire, but it was actually the car park that they were parked on top of. Now, there's a mouse clicking issue, which I'll discuss in more detail later on, but what I had to do, and it took me a while to figure this out, was to click on the parking area itself, and that allowed me to call the fire brigade to come and put it out. After they put the fire out, the building needed to be repaired. Now, again, they didn't really do a good job of telling me that. There may have been a pop-up somewhere in amongst hundreds of other pop-ups, but I just didn't realise that it needed to be repaired. This led to quite a massive period of confusion for me, because the vehicles were still parked on there and they were still working. They were still driving off it and going and doing their jobs and then coming back and parking it up on there. It seemed to be fine. But when I moved them about and tried to swap things about, I couldn't put any other object on that car park, but it didn't really tell me why. There was no information pop-up to say, you can't do this because. There was no visual change to the car park to sort of identify or alert me to the fact that it needed to be repaired. Eventually I figured it out and I repaired it and everything worked fine. But there are quite a few issues like that in the game at the moment. Another thing I wanted to see was enhanced animal husbandry. I wanted to see or have the ability to put animals in fields, have more involved processing of animals, and maybe, stillbirths, like when you mate the animals, sometimes the animals don't make it, that kind of thing. None of that has changed at all. In fact, it's exactly the same as it was before. Another thing I wanted to see was an improvement to field conditions and unexpected issues that can cause you problems during your farming year. I'm talking drought, the ability or the need to manage the pH value of the ground itself. I'm talking about long summers, I'm talking about floods, I'm talking about long winters. None of that's really been added, and it's a bit of a shame as well. The campaign itself, in my opinion, is poorly thought out. The expectations that are placed on you just take far too long, especially at the beginning of a campaign. You have to build some cows to make some milk, to make some cheese, but then the price on dairy products drops. So then you have to build an abattoir and kill the cows and make money off the beef. But you can't breed the cows because that's locked, because it's part of the campaign. In the campaign, many, many, many things are locked. You are very restricted with what you can do. So what you end up doing, or what I ended up doing, was buying cows to process them, because I had to get a certain amount of cows processed before it would let me continue the campaign. But that was actually costing me more money than they were making. The whole system just seems to be a little bit clunky and a little bit broken. It could be tweaked and fixed and improved, but honestly, I think the campaign is a bit of a disaster and it needs to be completely rethought. Now, I think it's possible that you can unlock the ability to breed animals later on, and I'm pretty sure, in fact, I remember distinctly in Farm Manager 2018, you could breed your animals. So it must be something that you can unlock later. I can't believe for a moment that they've taken that out of the game completely. But again, there's no information to explain this to you. In fact, the hand-holding here is pretty poor, and people who are not used to the game are going to run into many, many issues, just like this one. And the other issues that existed in the previous game and still exist in this game, the campaign becomes pretty much unplayable. First of all, it becomes unenjoyable, and then it becomes unplayable. Even if you switch over to free mode, you'll find that there are too many fixed-in-place issues and bugs that you're going to have to step over and trip over and fall through and have to put up with. For example, all the orchard fruits will bear fruit in exactly, let's say for argument's sake, 125 days. Instead of, the fruit will be ready to pick in approximately 125 days, give or take a week or two, giving it some sort of realism. But no, every single orchard you have will be ready to pick on the same day every single year. So that means you have to have enough staff to cover all of those orchards at exactly the same time every year. And that just doesn't work. It doesn't seem to work that way with the fields. The fields seem to be more staggered, if you will, but they do sort of end up being at about the same time. I think it would be much better if there was an approximate time that stuff would be ready. That would be much better. Let's talk about the mouse, the UI, and the bugs and the stability in the game. Trying to click on things in this game is an absolute nightmare. Sometimes it's easier than other times, and that appears to be dependent on the level of zoom that you have. So sometimes, depending on the level of zoom that you have to actually miss the object that you're trying to click on in order to be able to click on it. It's a nightmare. It doesn't work well. Maybe it's because I'm playing on 4K, but certainly it is a problem throughout the game. It doesn't matter what I do, it's always a problem. The UI, I think, is rather poorly thought out. It's better, certainly it's better, but some of the existing stuff still appears to be here, and it's not great. For example, let's say you want to sack multiple staff members. That will require, and I'm going to tell you something about this in a minute, which will blow your mind, but sacking multiple staff at the same time will require hundreds, and I do mean hundreds, of completely unnecessary mouse clicks. It will take a long time, it will frustrate you, and, well, I'm going to discuss this in more detail in a bit. It's just very poorly thought out. There is a perfect window where this could be done very, very easily, but they just haven't designed it to be done that way. Now, one thing you can't do in this game, and some people will complain about it, is reposition buildings. Now, actually, I'm okay with that, because in the real world, if you build a building, you can't just pick it up and move it 3 feet to the left. What I'm not okay with, and I wasn't okay with in 2018, is when I build fields. I can only build rectangles. There are no sort of odd shapes or angles allowed. I cannot add to a field once I've created a field. If you like your farm to be neat and tidy, this will get in the way of it all the time. It's a really silly thing not to have fixed. I say fixed, it's something that was in the original game and it's still here, but it really, really shouldn't be. Whilst I say that the UI is improved, and it is, it's also pretty bloody confusing at best. I, for a while, stumbled over the fact that fields were telling me that there were no tractors or this particular item isn't available. But actually they were just being used by somebody else. So it should say instead, waiting for it to become free or in the queue or something like that. But to keep telling me massive alert signal and telling me that it doesn't exist, not available. Currently, there is no ability to research the prices for products before you start investing in them. That's not really there, and it certainly isn't available year upon year, so you can't look back and see how much growth there has been in a particular thing. None of that really seems to exist. There are also periods of time where, now I'm not sure if it's demand or price. Let's say, for example, there's a 15% plus on strawberries. Now that might mean that the demand has gone up by 15%, which is great. That means start growing stuff and eventually you should sell it at a higher price. But it doesn't seem to accurately reflect that in the pricing system itself. Equally, if you're going to buy a product, if you look at how much is it to buy, that has little to no reflection on how much it is to sell. There definitely needs to be more detail and information surrounding sale prices and product value. Equally, when you're selecting a crop to put into a field, it would be very advantageous to know what equipment you need before you plant it. The way it is now, you have to select it, start the planting process, and then look and see what you don't have. Then you can swap it if you want to, if you've changed your mind, but you may incur some costs as a result of that. And there are other things that don't seem to make sense as well. For example, I opened a sapling plant in order to create saplings for black currants. Now, every other plant type was available there, but not black currants. I don't know why. Is it a bug or is it by design? If it's by design, then really somewhere the game needs to give me more detail about why every other type of plant or bush is available in that plant, but not black currants. It just doesn't seem to make any sense at all. And there are lots and lots of bugs that I've stumbled across, some of them very big, most of them very small. For example, moving equipment. What happens sometimes, and I can't figure out why it does it, is that it will create a duplicate, or at least it thinks it creates a duplicate. So if you're trying to organise, well, in this example, I was trying to sell one of my parking lots so that I could turn it into a shed so that I can keep my equipment parked inside, and that means that they break down 30% less often, which is very, very good idea, by the way. So I moved it back and moved it again, still had the same problem. So I thought, well, okay, I'll try and sell the duplicate seed drill and see what happens. They both disappeared, so I lost my seed drill as a result of that bug. That isn't a big bug, but it is constant. These kind of issues, trying to move a cow to a different animal location, just simply wouldn't move. It wouldn't do it. And then there was an update, and yes, it did then work, and it does now seem to work. But this seems to be, if I remember correctly, a bug that existed in 2018. As for stability, the game has not crashed at all, but there have been a few serious stutters. I'm talking somewhere between 1 and 2 FPS. Now, it might be happening whilst the game is auto-saving, I don't know. Certainly it doesn't happen often, maybe once a year or once every 2 years, but when it happens, it goes down to about 1 FPS for about 30 seconds to a minute, something like that. Mostly though, the game has been fine, it has run fine, and there have been no issues. But because of the way that the game is designed, and because of the limitations with everything, you can't really get your hands into anything. So playing the game on the fastest setting seems to be the only reasonable way to play this game and get anywhere. Now this game can be fun. It can be enjoyable. I do have moments where I really, really like the game. There are lots of things that I do like about the game. But I think 2021 needs a lot of work before I regard it as a good game. Too many of the issues from 2018 still exist, and too many of the new features don't work properly because of existing issues or new issues that have been implemented. Now I'm sure the developers will fix this, and I hope, upon hope, that the version I'm playing is not the same version that you will buy on game day itself. My advice to you is to wait for patches and updates, and if you want, go and watch some of my gameplay footage and you can see all the bugs and issues, and I will try and update you if the game has improved. And if you want to, just leave me a comment in the comment section and I will answer you there. But 2021 is not a game that has reached its full potential. I hope you find this review helpful, guys. If you did, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, leave me a comment below, and if you can spare a couple of quid, we would really appreciate it, because we're a small channel that struggle to bring you honest fact-based reviews like this one. Until next time, take care. Goodbye for now.